First day back, just got back from Singapore. Really jet lagged. Today's gonna be rough. Let's get some coffee. It feels like midnight in my head.
Yeah,
well, like 10 at night. Right? Yeah, it's like 12 at night. It was a lot easier when I was younger to travel like that. Bro, and I thought I did it right too. Like on the way back, I like fell asleep when I was supposed to on the plane. Then I stayed up all the second plane, got home, was able to go to bed at like a normal time. And then I had all these meetings yesterday and I was just destroyed, bro. Like, you ever drove home real late at night and you're like afraid you're gonna fall asleep in the car?
Yeah.
That was me yesterday during the day. It was a great show though. I feel like these could be cleaned better. The one I grabbed though is pretty clean. Yeah, I only have like 2 more weeks before I take off time for the baby. So it's kind of crunch time these next 2 weeks. That's why I'm tattooing today. A lot of times I'll take at least some time off from getting home from a big trip. Not today. So the Singapore trip was really good. I'd never been there before. It was really exciting to just go somewhere new. It was long though, it was a long trip. We left here, 6-hour flight to California, and then California to Singapore, which was a 16-hour flight, and it's a 12-hour time difference. So it was, a little rough getting adjusted, but the city was sick. It felt so safe. It was kind of weird all the laws they have, everything from vaping is illegal. They had some weird ones like you can't have chewing gum, no singing outside. I think there's even a thing about public displays of affection. Every time I went outside, I was like, I'm probably gonna break the law today. But that being said, it was so safe and clean. And everything felt pretty high-end luxury. The food was amazing, a lot of really good seafood. We tried everything from these weird hermit fucking crab things to stingray to prawns. It was really great food-wise. While I was there at the convention, I had the honor of being a judge, so that was really fun. Got to judge, some bodysuit categories, some best of day, primarily all black and gray stuff, at least for my portion. Got to do it with a good friend of mine, Bradley. There's a very funny picture of us judging, which I'll throw in the video. We got back a day ago, pretty much got organized yesterday. Thankfully, Chris got to go with me, so that's always fun, getting to bring anyone from the shop. Those of you that don't know, Chris is obsessed with food, specifically sweets and candies, and was just going nuts. Probably spent all his money on just candies, ice cream, whatever they had to offer. And I guess one of the biggest things that happened on the trip was I got to do a collab with a friend and amazing artist, Mystic. We did it on Chris, his lower arm, a combination of male figure, kind of struggling, sorrow, whatever. And he does lettering, so he did Crux, C-R-U-X. I was really thrilled with how the piece came out. I expressed to Mystic I really wanted it to look like one piece, very cohesive, and still with the ability to tell that it was done by 2 artists. It is cool if you collab with someone that's the same style as you and it just looks like one big piece, but I really like when you can see the elements from both artists. Really could not be happier with how that came out, and it's really nice that it's on Chris. Kind of a funny thing that happened was we ended up finding these, it was called a luge, but essentially these carts on gravel in one of the islands in South Singapore. I forget what it's called. But anyway, we get there and Mystic wanted to do it. It's almost like these little plastic carts you sit in with wheels. And if you push all the way forward, it breaks. If you pull, you go. It's pretty simple. And we get there and I see all these little kids there. which was very deceiving because that makes me think like, oh, this is very safe, right? I could not have been more wrong. So you take, 4 or 5 artists that are all jet lagged and sleep deprived and have gambling problems, and you put them in kart racing, right? And we just start gambling on all the races. We get really competitive. And after a few times on the track, I mean, we're just not using the brake. We're probably going 20, maybe even 20 plus miles an hour. No seat belts, nothing. And I crashed so bad. And it was my fault, because we found out a couple things. One, if you're riding next to someone and you reach over to their car and slam their brake down, they'll fall. Very funny. 2, and most of you probably know this one, like if you come into the back of their car and then push, you can spin them out. So I was doing that, but I tried to do it to Chris, who's a lot heavier than I am. So it didn't work very well. And I completely flipped, went over my cart. I wrecked, my whole leg here. And it goes all the way up my leg. But it was very fun. So if you go to Singapore, do the luge, very fun. But yeah, let's get into the tattoo. So there's a few things going on with this design. The description I got is Cypher from Warhammer 40K. So I don't really have a lot of experience with this game or this character, so I did have to do some research to make sure I had the right elements with that. So I went online, I looked at a lot of like fan art and descriptions of the character. What I found is, he has a gun, he has a sword, and he has a mask. So to me, I kind of took that as like, okay, there can be 2 forms of this character. One where it's just a hood, exposed face, and then this kind of mask that he wears. So I really wanted to get all the aspects of this character. So here's a design, where I have him and his, just his face figure with a gun shooting, sword in the background there, and then kind of a close-up of the mask that I would assume he would wear. Now, this is based off, a figurine. So the figurine's like kind of simple, and I wanted to make it more of like a character than rather just copying the figurine. So that being said, I got to get approval from the client and make sure that my vision, matches what he has in his head. So once I get that approval, I will finish the stencil. Either way with this design, the helmet is very dark. So to bring out some balance and the character in front, I'm gonna have to make the character in front a little bit lighter. Now, I do have these light aspects coming out from the gun, I added in some movement there. There's a little bit of white in parts of his cloak. I'm gonna try to leave those very open and make sure that the dark tones really sculpt the important parts of the image. So to me, the important parts are the face with the hood, the shoulder, the hand holding the gun, and then just to be able to differentiate between the layers of cloak. So I want those things to be very clear. Like this is his face, this is his arm, this is the gun. And then coming into the background of the big helmet face, we can see like on the left, a lot of that's in darkness, just some little accents, like kind of this hose that's coming out from his mouth, the eye, and then kind of like the side orbital are poking out. Most of the rest of the face is in darkness, and then the other side is very light. This is going on a shoulder, so we're gonna have the light here. So I want the head to balance nicely in the shoulder, so part of that is gonna be, in the stencil. I want the dark parts to frame out our key elements, and I wanna make sure that I leave a good amount of balance between our light and our darkness. So if I had to say like what's really important to me on this piece, it's that our front character sticks out, and we're gonna do that by keeping him overall lighter. There will still be some blacks in the image. We will probably see a full contrast scale in there, so like from black all the way to white. And then our figure in the background is gonna kind of favor the darker side of the grayscale. And this will help keep our front character out in the open, high contrast, almost like our main subject. And then we'll have this cool dark face in the background. And having that high contrast will allow me to put in this kind of glow element throughout the flow points. So let's get some approval on the design and we'll get into the tattoo. Hopefully it goes well. So we had a little bit of a design change, which is totally fine and kind of expected. So I got some of the information incorrect where I had that mask. He does not associate that with the character, so we got rid of the mask, developed a new character, and then I just had to kind of work him in to the sleeve because we wanted to get the gun, you know, because client is saying, you know, that's something he truly associates with the character, and I'm very happy about this change because we sat down, I got to learn what aspects of the character are important to him in the tattoo. We nailed all of them. It's still a really cool design. So this is like our figure here. So I had to play with this arm a little bit to get the gun to fit into this rectangle shape, but we still have a really cool character, cool textures in all the clothing. We have the secondary gun here. It fits the arm well. I'm gonna play with the values a little bit to lighten up some of this picture. So I'm still gonna be focusing on the same things, the balance of our grayscale and values in there, making sure it doesn't look weird on the shoulder because we have the face and the hand up there. So we're really gonna pay attention to that when we do the stenciling. I'm gonna pay attention to my little details, like on these skulls and the chains, and make sure that they poke out. And then creating like a high value look to a lot of this armor, and then keeping a lighter look on the cloth so that we'll be able to tell the difference between the two. I'll probably go over a little bit of techniques with 3RLing this and how to build up a lot of these different textures in here. But I'm gonna get the stencil down now. We'll put the stencil on him and then we'll get into the tattoo. So the goal is to get the face and the gun in this region without warping it too much. And then to have, you know, this kind of fade out of the cloak and the knee just coming in past the break point. So we're looking at about here. We'll see how this goes. This is going to put the head slightly to the left side, which I kind of like. Keeping the gun in that kind of forced perspective, kind of pointed up, coming at you. And the direction of this piece is to the right. So I like that there's a better perspective on the gun coming up towards that direction. Cool. So it fits in there really nice. I wanted to make sure this just didn't warp too much where it looked weird. Has nice flow coming down on the side here. You can see his body's kind of this way. That's what we want. All the important stuff is in the center. We can see it looking at it this way. Nothing too crazy on the elbow. The knee finishes on the elbow, which is like perfect because I want that to fade off and things don't really stick on the elbow too well. So that really couldn't have worked out better. And then on the back, we have his other arm. So this is looking really good to me. Right now I'm using the 083. I'm getting a nice gray line in there. Now this panel is huge, so I'll always take a look at the piece and plan ahead, like are we gonna finish this thing, are we not? This one's big, so my guess is we're not gonna finish it. Therefore, I'm gray lining it, so we don't have to re-stencil. Even if we don't finish, we're still looking good. So I use this skinny 3, this 083, to get these really faint lines in. I'm using a 50% gray. So that 50% mixed with this thin line is gonna create kind of that perfect look that I want, where I'll be able to distinguish the line, but it's not anything too permanent where it's gonna get in the way of shading. That's like really my preferred method with the gray line. Is those two combinations, the 083 and a 50% gray wash. Cool, so we got our gray line in there. Now we're just gonna start separating some of this cloth going on. This triangle here is our darkest part. You can see it in the reference, this upside down triangle. And then next is here, and then this side is lighter. So we're gonna get this upside down triangle in there, and move on to this one and vice versa. To start separating some of these tones. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it, is in those triangle patterns. So like in this one, you just see like a really dark gray and the dark gray. Maybe up in the crease there, there's some black. And then as it starts coming down the arm, we're gonna fade it out. Right here is like a fold or like a ridge to the other section. This is all light over here. So I don't mind having kind of like a hard cut there because it shows where the fabric starts and stops. You can even flick right off it. You can pick and flick. Whereas everything in here is not gonna have such an abrupt start and end point. It's gonna be a little smoother shading to show that it's like one piece of fabric. The hard cut shows that it's a new piece or that it ends. You can see faded that right off. We're gonna be doing that with everything that's on the bottom. And then we'll gradually build it back up as it comes up the arm. That way we don't have anything difficult to come into later as we build the sleeve. So now we're coming up to the other side of this upside down triangle, which is another separation point. You can see I'm kind of outlining it right now. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna put, kind of a ridge on there, define the border to make it obvious. Create that separation so you can kind of see it forming now. I did the two outside shapes first because they're darker. And then the inner part of this section. I'm just gonna build them up a little bit more, and I'm just gonna drop a down fade over the whole thing, and that's gonna get the job done. So I'll build up these darker parts a little bit more. We have another fold right here, so I can flick right off that. But in here, it's just kind of like a shadow. So I'm not gonna define the border as much, but as we come down, that's a fold, that's a fold. So I can flick right off of it. Cool, so we got those two outsides in. Now we're gonna do that down fade. Because the darkest part is up here where they meet, and they kind of cast a shadow on this cloth underneath. So you can just pull your fade down, or you can work it in reverse and come back up like I'm doing now. You just slow down as you get to the top, which will give the machine more time to hit, and therefore it'll make it darker. And I'm just kind of going wall to wall between the two bordering fabrics. And this will help define those lines as well. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. Helps create the fade and the separation. So we're on the light side now. on the far right side. And really, I'm just the same approach. I'm still starting with the darker areas. I'm still putting the harsh cuts on the folds. I'm just not layering it as much. And you can see I have this side in there, and as we get there, it's way lighter. So it's the same process, just kind of lack of layers. I'm still gonna leave somewhat minimal skin tone, but you might just see me cover it with a single layer rather than build up the value, you know, 2 or 3 times like I did in the other sections. And this will help keep this, you know, layer of cloth in front, lighter, everything we're going for. But dividing those sections like that, especially, you know, in this outfit or robe, I think really helps out with detail, making it look more dynamic, more layered, just generally, you know, more impressive to look at rather than making all the same tone, all dark. I think it's more fun to look at when you have different sections going on like that. You do have to be a little bit more careful with the tones that you implement because you don't have the ability to go back over them several times to just make them darker, like if you're trying to change things. So we want to be really intentional in those light areas. You know, in the darker areas, you might make a shade and not love it, so you can go over it and continue to shape it more and more and more. We have less of an ability to do that in the lighter areas. And then even in the lighter areas, like I'm going to be putting in some deeper shadows here and there, like under this bag we'll have, you know, a decent shadow, but it's still separated by the light cloth here, you know, compared to there, right? So it still produces a nice effect. It doesn't get in the way of the separation being created. We're still looking good. So we're calling it for the day. Made really good progress today. You can definitely get a vibe of how it's going to look, and then you see our gray lines on the top. For some of the more specific things like skull and face, I just feathered in, you know, some contour points, just mapped it out to make my life easier in the future so I don't have to completely do it from scratch. But we have the full value down here. You can see that dark section I started in, kind of a middle ground here, another dark, and then back to the light. And you can already see how it starts to break up the image. I'm really happy with the shading. We got, you know, pops and light value where it's needed, like with the skull and the belt buckle. We've even got the knee in the back here. But these, you know, these kind of figure pieces always look so cool to me, and if you play with all the texture and the layering, you can get extreme depth from these images. You know, everything from a knee coming forward to back shadow to midtones and armor, and then you guys will see it in the shoulders, face and hood as we move up. But it just creates a really dynamic piece. Good wrap. Even with the wrap, you can tell what it is because when we stenciled it, you know, we made sure all of our main features were visible from the side, but really can't wait to finish it. Super happy with the progress. So we'll get them wrapped up and go over aftercare.